Just 3 days ago, the world marked a very solemn anniversary. It took me back to one night last March in Rome, as the first wave of this terrible pandemic was sweeping through the people of Italy and around the globe. Our Holy Father, Pope Francis, stood on the steps of St. Peter's and peered into the gloom of an empty Vatican Square. Though he stood there alone, he had come to preach the gospel that night and to offer a blessing to the whole frightened city of Rome and to the entire world. The Pope began. Thick darkness has gathered over our squares, our streets, our cities. It has taken over our lives, filling everything with a deafening silence and a distressing void that stops everything as it passes by. We feel in the air. We notice it in people's gestures. Their glances give them away. We find ourselves afraid and lost. In that moment, the Pope was like every other troubled preacher on this planet at the beginning of this scourge, praying for the right words, searching to know how to speak the gospel in a world plunged into confusion, disruption, and despair. Every preacher has been there. So has every parent and grandparent trying to explain a tragedy of this proportion. He made us look at the troubles we've seen, yet he pointed beyond the troubles of the world to the grace in the world. It is our job to send up a flare of hope, and then in the flare's light, share what we see happening in the world. It falls to us in the pulpit and you at home to not impose a premature clarity on our deeply unsettling circumstances, and to allow the great texts of our scriptures to interpret and reframe our suffering within the light of God. And so a year has passed now, almost to the day, when the pandemic was first announced. It has left no nation untouched and has spread so much sorrow. It has prompted us to rethink our understanding of suffering itself. The cost has been incalculable. The grief beyond any human being's ability to even comprehend. Most of us have swung from fear to fear. We have found reason to argue about everything. Whose fault? Who is to blame? What do we do now? We in the church lost Easter and Christmas, and now something of Easter again. For our students, it has been one disappointment after another, and the cost to our freshmen has broken my heart. For me, the question is, how do I even begin to grieve more than 500,000 people in our own country alone? How do I even begin to grieve getting on to 3 million human beings on this planet who have died from this virus? Almost 3 million human beings. How do we account for the cost of even 100,000 decisions we've had to make, even here, to reach out to you and to connect with you and to help you during this awful time, not knowing whatever the right answer was? All this decision-making that we've all had to make is so hard. Here at the CSC, it's been really hard too, to make the best decisions we know how. Every decision came with some sort of letting go of a good thing and people. But the cost. Final goodbyes never shared. Many left with lifetimes of grief. Many feel broken in body and in heart, weary and trying to stay loving in the midst of it all. This virus has brought us to our knees. It has humbled us. It has brought out the worst in us, and I have to say, it has also brought out the best in us. Our weaknesses have gotten weaker, and our strengths have gotten stronger. This awful scourge has become a great teacher to us, but the learning has not come easy, and it's not over. It is Lent. Yes, I know it's Laetare Sunday. I got my pink on. A Sunday set aside as kind of a reprieve in the practice of Lent to take a breath, to find maybe a little bit of joy and gratitude during these days of discipline, of sacrifice, and dying to self. Jesus said to Nicodemus in this gospel you just heard, just as Moses lifted up the serpent in the desert, so must the Son of Man, the truly human one, be lifted up, so that everyone who believes in him may have eternal life, the fullness of life, not just at the end, but this very hour. What does this mean that Moses lifted up a serpent for all to see? One of the plagues the Israelites suffered was an infestation of snakes. They were venomous. Many died. For Moses to hold up a snake before them was to call them to never forget what they have suffered, what they have lost, and the God who got them through it. Moses was saying to them, you got to look at this, a serpent, the cause of all this pain and agony and suffering and death in our community. You've got to look at this, and you've got to feel it and remember it, and don't be afraid to look at it. Those were a version of our plague. Those snakes, those serpents were a version of our plague, and it taught them more important things about themselves, their faith, and most importantly, about their God. Moses holding up that snake would be akin to me holding up the virus in front of you, even years from now, and saying, look at this. We can't forget. Look at this and remember. In other words, my friends, we have to brace ourselves to look at our losses. We have to grit our teeth and give ourselves a chance to cry, to grieve, to lament. It all belongs. It belongs here, and it belongs in our own personal lives. And if we don't, it will come back and haunt us as depression or anxiety or many things that happen to people when they don't let themselves grieve. Granted, there's no one way to grieve, but grieve we must, if ever we are to become whole in our loving. There is just no one right way, but grieve we must, if ever we are to become whole in our loving. But we'd rather not. We'd rather forget. We'd rather not tear up when we see that empty seat at our table alongside us in our bedroom. We don't want to feel it, even here at Mass when we come to Mass. But feel it we must. And we bring with us into these pews everything we are, everything, every thought, every dream, every desire, and every emotion, every letting go. A student said to me last year, I don't want to come to Mass and feel sad all over again. I feel sad enough in my life. But there has to be a place for our sadness here, or we have no reason to be here, and you who join us from home as well. It all belongs to who we are, and so there's a place for all of us here, under our totem, under our cross. In the midst of this Lent, we are not being an honest church if we also did not make space for lament here today on the anniversary of so much suffering. What we hold up before each other and before the world is the cross of Christ. In those earliest days, the pandemic wasn't just terrifying, it was also unifying. The virus doesn't discriminate, we were told. Flattening the curve. Remember when we first heard that phrase? Flattening the curve would become all of our work. Everybody's work to do. We're all in this thing together. This pandemic year has stretched from Lent to Lent for us. And Lent has offered us an opportunity to hold suffering. To hold suffering. My friends, we dare not distract ourselves from the suffering of life by some sort of discipline we call suffering from giving up candy or meat or whatever it is we might give up along the way. There's a lot of suffering in the world we have yet to embrace and to dare to hold. And all those things can be distractions that keep us superficial instead of taking the deep dive into this human time. It's been an opportunity offered to us, if we dare take it, to hold the suffering, to let it be present in ways that much of the year we'd rather ignore, avoid, reject. A Mass like this, where we pay attention, is not wallowing. It's a courageous step in to the pain that lies at its source, buoyed up by a transcendent hope that provides a light to follow in this dark night of the soul. In many ways, at many points along the way, we found ourselves giving thanks in unexpected joys, received even in the midst of unintended consequences that have shaped our lives forever. And not always for the worse, maybe even for the better. We have more or less buried our dead. Our grief has been interrupted by churches that can only let in 10 or 20 or 30 or 30% to join us at the casket of someone we've loved. A grief interrupted. We left oftentimes with more sadness than solace from these limitations. And what Jesus says in this gospel, he says, he might be calling right now. What Jesus says in this gospel is, look to my cross. Look to my cross, Jesus says. Or in the exact words of this gospel, as Moses held up the serpent before the people, so will I be lifted up for you to see. By his cross, we have been saved. By his cross, we have been redeemed. By his cross, we have been healed and embraced so that nothing and no one, no COVID virus or any human being can separate us from the redeeming love. That cross has kept us from dissolving into despair. By that cross, we can see and live into the light, and we can hope for the hope revealed here. The cross is the flare we send up to all who are willing to look, for all to see. We do not for a second believe God sends such thing as COVID-19 pandemics. We do, however, believe strongly in the midst and the wake of such catastrophic events that God teaches us things about ourselves, about our faith, about our God, and most importantly, about trusting God to lead us through our wastelands to God's promise. Against this large backdrop of doom, we are learning how to speak into the mystery of human suffering and to keep on loving God and our neighbor as we love ourselves. We are learning that the proper posture for prayer is to stand up and cry out. Our calling is to assist God in the deliverance of the world in any and every way we can. Yes, it's been hard, and it is hard. And yet, in the midst of the troubles of the world, we need to point to the grace in the world, which is to say, we need to help each other see what God is doing, has done, and promises to do. Yes, it's dark, but we need to send up a flare of gospel hope, and then in that light share what we see happening here. We can do this hard thing, you and I. As the Pope was preparing to leave that Vatican Square, shrouded in the night, that dark Lenten night in Rome, he wondered out loud in front of the world if it might not be true that of all the things this virus has destroyed, maybe the most consequential is the destruction done by this pandemic to human self-assurance and to overconfidence in our own power that just might open us up once more to turn to the God who alone can save. That was his flare, shut up against the darkness of that night. And then he just stood there, alone, silent, gazing at the cross.